Welcome back, everyone, to While the Leaves Wither Away. In the last episode, we went to we went to Hazeltine Mansion, found a lot of information, a lot of things that make things that have happened in the story make more sense, things that we weren't necessarily expecting, uh, and finally got confirmation of something we, the reader, knew, but Nate and Noel definitely didn't. And now, before we get into it, I actually want to give a shout out to the author of the story, Hazel's new merch store, which I'm going to link in the description below. And I'm going to show on screen now the key rings, which I ordered from there, which came the other day. As you can see, we've got the classic Coma Trio, and of course, my favorites, the Coma Nomads. But there's all kinds of stuff on there, and there's all kinds of new stuff being added to there. You can join the Discord server as well for updates. It's amazing, honestly. I respect I respect the respect the hustle. But anyway, we're gonna continue. We're at chapter 18, nearing the end because there's 23 chapters. That Boy Wyatt, which is a reference to in Yokai Watch 3, there's a chapter called That Boy Book. That's a nice little, neat little reference right there. And the summary is confessions, confirmations, and resolve. And then you've got your warning here that this chapter does include attempted suicide, like the previous chapter did. So we know it's going to be pretty deep, to say the least. So I mean, if you can't handle that, then you probably shouldn't watch the last episode either. Let's, without further ado, begin. Stop that boy! Weaving through the streets of a busy summer afternoon, he didn't dare turn back. The frail bag he clutched to his chest bobbed from side to side as he ran, his fist holding on tight like it was a secret treasure worth thousands. His other hand kept his hood in place, the childish alien pattern and fake antenna being the only thing the shopkeeper could describe to the police once the boy escaped. He'll have to lay low for a while. Thankfully, with the spoils he snagged today, he should be set for the rest of the week. But a growing problem arose. The hoodie. Having used it plenty of times on the steel, as well as undergoing a growth spurt, natural for that age, the hoodie will be useless soon. He can worry about that later. Getting home without being caught was his priority. He was alone in a little shack, elevated by the supporting tree that shot right through the middle of the interior. In no way was he an experienced builder, dealing with leaks and cracks every other day at this point. But it was that need to survive that kept him going. He had no other choice but this. There was no one to drag him down that way. And just before his oversized boot had touched the first ladder step, an unusual rustling alerted him. So there was a strange sounding mew. The nets must have caught something. He took a detour, heading into the surrounding trees to investigate, buying every trap he put in place beforehand. Following the struggle that echoed in the air, allowed him to skip a few. And before long he'd found it. Only it wasn't a squirrel or a rabbit like he'd been expecting. Below him, curled up and helpless under the mesh, sat a frail kitten. Rawr! It said in what he assumed was an attempted meow, its weak teeth digging into the net in a vain attempt at escaping. The poor thing was soaked. There was a short shower while he was gone, so that must have been the culprit. One step was all the boy needed before it finally registered his presence, hair sticking up and mouth opening with a hiss. Usually this was the part where he put out of his misery, saving it for dinner over an open fire later. But that was reserved for wild animals. Despite the circumstances, the thought of eating a cat still made him scowl. He took it slow as he crouched down, ignoring the growing snarls from the kitten, since, in that position, they both knew it couldn't go anywhere. The bag was unwrapped, revealing an assortment of goods inside: fresh fruit, oily fish, a few packets of rice. Not much, but paired with the ingredients he already kept in the base, he shouldn't starve too harshly. I'll be back, aye? he whispered, and the kitten watched him with tired eyes the entire time he sat by the campfire, impaling one of the fish with the homemade skewer. His free hand rested on his chin as he tilted his head away, both to avoid getting smoke in his eyes and so that he didn't have to stare at the fire for too long. In truth, he despised it. Not only was it a nightmare to get a decent flame going with the limited materials he had, but it only reminded him of one thing. It was a nightmare in itself. Still, it was a necessity. So of course he had to get over it. I mean, if you've ever been camping, you know that yeah, fire is hard to get a fire going. And one thing I definitely don't recommend is what a lot of people were doing when I was on a scout camp, and that's spraying deodorant into the fire. I mean, we very easily could have been seriously injured, but thankfully nothing happened. We just got lucky. And if you can try getting like one of them flint and steels and we use some special kind of cotton, I think it was. But yeah, anyway, Buck doesn't have any of that, so it's even harder for him. About 20 long minutes had passed, and the boy returned to the feline with the skewer in hand. You're lucky I'm doing this, you know. He spoke rather harshly, feigning a sour mood as he reached to rip open the net. To his surprise, the cat stopped hissing, instead laser focused on the cooked meat in front of it, the aroma filling its tiny nostrils. Its previous instinct to run away as soon as it was free was long gone. Instead, the boy watched it carefully approach with wobbly legs. Take it easy, he mumbled, pointing the skewer a little closer, a subtle helping hand. And it couldn't have gone any easier, the cat gently nibbling the fish as if its teeth were brittle. But they'd crack and break at any moment. Slowly, but surely, it feasted, and the boy had to huff. A smile did follow, though, even if it was small. Gradually, he lowered the stick onto the floor, the cat paying no mind instead continuing to hungrily munch on the meat. Fish that off and scram. You need to get back to your owner. Though he hadn't a clue who the owner could be. No one else resided on this side of the river. It wasn't his problem, though. He just wasted some of the food he'd risked his life to get, for God's sake. Walking away, returning to the base, he assumed that to be the end of it. Until it wasn't. Aside from putting away the groceries and tidying up a little, he also had to catch up on his novel. About aliens, obviously, and no, he didn't believe it to be a fairy tale. It was non-fiction. It had to be. Everything made sense. He barely flicked through the first page of the next chapter before a faint scratching sound emerged from the door. She diavolo, he quit. Rawr! The kitten's reaction was minimal when he swung the door open, sitting there politely, a stark difference to the sorrowful mess it was minutes prior. His tail wagged from side to side, almost in an expectant and hopeful way. The boy was struggling to find words. Guess it was sticking around for a little while longer then. If only they had more time. Now all he had was a dirt mound, small and insignificant to anyone else. But to him, it was everything, even when it was now nothing. And all he had to blame was himself. In that minimal time alone, time he rarely salvaged over the course of a month, allowed privacy without his watchful eyes piercing through him, reaching into his brain and rewiring every belief, discarding every ounce of hope. He didn't bother with any attempts at escape. It was spent wallowing in his own despair, stiff with a few tears, because he wasn't worth it when he knew no one would come to save him. And yet, that boy still tried. Even when his fate was already locked and declared, even when met with the weapon that had finished the job. Wyatt was ordered to finish that job. A goal that had been cemented from the moment his lips met his skin. A second kiss. Only this time, with a bullet. It was easier said than done. Far, far easier. He barely raised the blaster a few centimeters before Noelle pounced. You bastard! She cried out, despite herself. The state Giovanni had left her and made recharging a chore. Icicles were born from under her fingertips, frantic and swift, thrown so desperately it aimed straight for the eyes. She couldn't think at all while this frazzled, a detriment to Wyatt's calm and collected mask. She'd fallen just as quickly as she'd gotten up. His palm jammed into the side of her skull in a similar fashion to Giovanni. Raw power preferred over the weapon he'd hastily dropped into his pocket. Nate yelped helplessly at the sight. Wyatt slammed, forcing her into another blackout. Noelle! Yet his mouth was snapped shut. The blasters returned, demanding his silence all over again. Back to square one, with the aggressive half of the twins immobile, leaving only the meek He knew he couldn't get away with just a simple warning this time. It had to be done. Under his control, it had to be done. He had to show he wasn't weak, like Nate and Giovanni and everyone else was thinking. It was exactly what Nate was thinking at the moment. It must be. Why else did he look less and less scared as the seconds ticked by? Why else would he respond with love when faced with danger? And how could Wyatt possibly be strong when all he knew was to run? Even now, he couldn't do it. Stray animal was one thing, but this... In one final desperate attempt at freeing himself, creating an opening for the twins to escape, he flicked the gun to the side, the muzzle pressed up just above his ear. Buck! Buck! His finger barely touched the trigger. From behind, a large, clawing hand hastily grabbed his shoulder, spinning his body until he was exactly where he wanted him to be, facing him. I could tell who it was just from the matching suit alone, his own forced upon him in a final attempt at kinship, after rejecting it for so long. But Giovanni didn't see a son. A title such as that, held by someone who cannot even hold their word, keep their promises, it was nothing short of embarrassing. Punishment was in effect immediately. With a quick snatch of the blaster, he slashed it against the boy's face. Buck! He came crashing down, Nate shuffling forward just in time to soften the fall, the hit already leaving a bleeding scar, perpendicular to the corner of his lips, some skin and baby teeth torn off. And Wyatt couldn't respond to any of it. Out cold. Hey, Buck! Come on, wake up! Nate patted his cheek a couple of times, his head lifted to his chest, an attempt at warmth rather than leaving him on the cold floor. Buck! Leave him, Giovanni huffed, checking the safety lock and dial before stuffing the gun into one of the deep pockets of his trousers, scoffing at the event that nearly unfolded. Coward. Course. Well, Nathan, I'm sure you figured it out, no? Go away! Nate hissed out a breathy response, already shuffling backwards, dragging Wyatt with him. You're his... Not anymore. This declaration sent a mix of emotions colliding with Nate's already frazzled state, only holding the collapsed red head all the more closer. A couple murmurs were whispered from his stiff lips, blending with the blood dribbling down his chin. As if Giovanni wasn't even there, Nate's concentration rested entirely on the boy in his arms. Shh. I'm here. It's okay. Still, Giovanni persisted. Out of all the chances I gave, the opportunities laid out before him, why must he stop to you? He snarled. You, who he'd known for such a minuscule fraction of his life. I gave him a choice, you know. Nate had to swallow his dread, his jaw shaking with every failed attempt at talking, unable to murmur out a simple question. What choice? The headstone. I can't lie. It was probably one of the most daring things he'd ever done. For a second, I was proud. And yet the very words sounded vile to him, leaving a bad taste in his mouth. But it was mine! That's sheer disrespect. Of course, punishment was in order. Just before he could continue, the boy slowly rose from his unconscious, squirming in Nate's grasp. Buck! He sounded nothing short of relieved, holding him steady as his vision reaches into the world. For one small moment, he thought them to be safe. Nate. Go on, Wyatt. That safety was short-lived, the man finally locking eye with his son. Tell him what you did. While he recovered from his dazed state, processing those words, laced with a threat, it clicked. He knew exactly what he was referring to. Nate sat bewildered, staring down at him expectantly. Buck? Instantly, his fists curled enough for his knuckles to turn white. That was you. Giovanni raised a single brow. Nate blinked, and all of a sudden Wyatt sprung to his feet, the brunette instinctively reaching an arm out. Buck! That was you! He yelled with a raised hand, his father taking a single step back before quickly realizing the harmlessness of the ambush. Wyatt's fists bashed against his chest, as high as he could reach, eyes screwed shut and failing to block the falling tears. That was you! That was you! That was all you! You did it! You killed him! I did no such thing. His response was agonizingly calm, resulting in more weak hits from the boy's end, a slight smirk breaking through. You acted on your own accord. Wyatt's attacks were soon used up, all known by all to be a waste of energy. There wasn't any point. Nate watched him fall to his knees, hunched forward as if to appear as small as possible, curling up into a ball. For his tragic state, his murmurs were barely audible, though after a few repeats, they could translate them perfectly. Gummy, Wyatt heaved. So sorry. For a moment, Nate's heart stopped beating. Gummy's dead and buried, Giovanni confirmed, tailed by his own son's harrowing cries, exact replicas of the ones he screamed that tragic night. A fitting punishment, which is why I don't understand. Walking past his son, ignoring Nate's quick attempts at inching away, his long strides were enough to cut off his path. How could he murder a dear friend who accompanied him every single day, and not you, an acquaintance he hardly knows? Nate's reply was stuck in his throat. I'll tell you why! The man's aggression returned like a switch. For love, why else? And do you truly believe such a thing could possibly deserve the name of Hazeltine? I promised him everything. All my fortunes, my support. To learn he survived the fire, I was nothing short of thrilled. Narrowly escaping a disaster like that. For a moment, I believed him to be on par with my own excellence. Turning back to him, that support he claimed was all gone. Yet he is nothing short of sinful. A wretched fault. To think I raised a faggot. Oh, how it would tarnish our family name. He was shut up quite fast, with an icicle launched in his direction and narrowly avoiding his crooked nose, the man swerving away just in time. Nate's breath shuddered, stare snapping over to his sister who, stubbornly, despite everything, still put up a fight. Get out! She hissed to Nate, words still mumbled with a wariness tracing their tone. Go! He didn't have a choice, the girl already making the moves to challenge Giovanni once more, entertaining him with her frenzied icicles. And while he was distracted, Nate had to take that opportunity. Come on, Buck, he whispered, already seizing the reluctant redhead who was quick to resist. No. Shh, hey. Still, Nate dragged him along until he reached a blind spot by the stairs, taking cover behind the wall. He watched as Wyatt still shook his head, pleading to be left alone, as if being saved wasn't an option. You're fine. It's just me. But it... He had to catch his breath, almost about to choke on his pent-up emotions and struggling voice. Not worth it. You heard what he said. Stop that! By force, Nate took Wyatt's cheeks into his hands, holding him close to ensure he was looking at him and absolutely nothing else. Close enough to the point where their noses were nearly touching. I don't care about what Giovanni told you. He had to be firm, ensuring his point got across to the brick wall he held. Thankfully, the cement was crumbling. I don't care about anything he says, actually. He's only thinking about himself. Why does it matter what he thinks? Obviously, he doesn't know what's best for you. Wyatt was about to interject instantly, Nate's rigid yet understanding stare cutting him off. The answer was obvious, though. To him, at least. But he's... Your dad. Nate furrowed his brows and Wyatt shivered at the very word. The brunette shook his head and scoffed before going further. Okay, well, if your dad told you to jump off a cliff, then would you? He didn't want to admit it, but for a moment he was considering it. No, exactly. And I love my dad, but if he told me to do the same, then of course I wouldn't. He was gradually getting harder to talk, a struggle to express how he felt with words. Physical actions weren't off the table, however, and Nate took advantage of it, leaning forward until his forehead rested against Wyatt's. And I don't want you to listen to him anymore. He traced the freckles listed across Wyatt's cheeks, unable to help the tears that now streamed down his own. I don't care if you're his son. You're better than that. You're so much more than that, Buck. He was holding off from doing something he'd secretly been longing for. something he wasn't entirely sure the other boy wanted, especially now of all times. With Giovanni so close, and Noel only able to hold him off for such minimal time. Well, that made it all the more urgent, didn't it? In case White would be ripped away from him once more, maybe forever this time. The final punishment. But Nate swore he wouldn't let it come to pass. He'd guard him with his life. He'd guard Buck, because that was who he was. Not the Wyatt that Giovanni forged and grown addicted to, manipulating him into a carbon copy of himself. His defenses had fallen. Buck would melt into a puddle if he could, leading him to accept all the affection he desired. No, needed. With that in mind, the two exchanging their genuine, somber smiles. Nate leaned in to gently peck his forehead, chuckling at the squeak from Buck's end, his surprised reaction. I love you so much, Nate had to say, in case he never had a chance to utter those words again. It felt a bit silly to declare something so heavy while still so young, but deep down he meant every part of it. There were no better ways to describe how he felt. And in this short time, free from Giovanni's chains, in a short time alone, free from Giovanni's chains, Buck looked like he would return the same confession. He cursed himself, both himself and the words stuck in his throat, refusing to leave no matter how hard he desperately tried. They hadn't long left. A saviour was bound to come, drawn in from the fights, and all the arguments and turmoil. That spirit of a deer resided within the fence's enclosure, and Giovanni froze at the sight. Ugh. Noel winced under her breath, dropping the icicles that chattered on impact as soon as they hit the weathered floor. Previously, had her head been sought for by that monster. Now it seemed he couldn't care less. You, he murmured aimlessly, blinking with every step the deer took while entering the house. Buck's guardian, one he assumed had abandoned him. He didn't understand why it must remain trapped within these grounds, leaving him to fend for himself in the outside world for far too long. But now it looks like a good thing, as Giovanni stood paralyzed, just as bewildered as the three children. Said children who made their move, scrambling for the exit. Yet Buck couldn't help but turn back. My lord, he heard his father mumble, plastering a welcoming smile onto his face, his hands raising to summon the spectating yokai. So we finally meet. Don't you see? My followers, all here. Another worldly spectacle, is it not? It was like Buck was invisible, all the small beings ignoring his presence to bow to their leader. They worship me, he continued. I am sure you are entertained. Though the deer's expression was unreadable, its head drifted to the side, its waning attention revitalized by the startled, alienated boy. Him? Giovanni chuckled. For a mere moment he sounded panicked. He's nothing to worry about. I'll negotiate with him shortly. At that, Buck had no choice but to do what he did best. Run. As for the twins, they escaped with minimal trouble, stumbling out of a hole in the fence. Thankfully, their trespassing had gone unnoticed, the forest too dense and haunted for anyone to see, especially at this time of night. We made it, Noelle murmured as loud as she could, smiling despite the jelly legs, immediately sinking down to the grass. Hey, easy! Nate rushed to help, wrapping his arms around her and sighing as clearly as he could, making a slight agitation well known. You pushed yourself too hard, idiot. Idiot? She scoffed, appreciating the support and leaning in despite the banter. Great, now even you sound like Buck. Great, now you even sound like Buck. Sadly, the very name still made her emotions veer into anger, clutching onto Nate all the more tighter. Hades, we're gonna sort her out, okay? Me and him. He wasn't sure how much she heard or saw, trying his best to reassure her with a gentle squeeze of the shoulder. Trust me, he's okay. He's good, but right now you really need to get some rest. Some rustlers echoed around the trees, Nate's head perking up like a meerkat, only willing him to hold Noel tighter. Buck? There you are. See? I knew it. They should have known their mother would come searching. Time had been lost track of entirely. She made no hesitations in sliding onto the ground, encasing them both into their embrace, their father following close behind, noticeably out of breath. This is what you're doing instead of going to every Mom, it was my fault. My idea, Nate rushed to explain while Ballion included what exactly to tell. Please, just... Hey, what happened to you? The father interrupted, cupping the wall's pale face and lifting it up slightly. The girl hardly able to keep her eyes open anymore. All he could focus on was a dark bruise by her neck. Nosy? It's fine, Nate insisted, still scanning the area beyond the fence. His inhales and exhales quickening with every second that passed by. I need... Finally, Buck appeared beyond the packed rows of trees, giving a single glance to the reunited family. Buck! Nate was first to greet him, jumping out of his mother's arms and rushing over, his smile wavering a little in a subtle step back. You okay? There wasn't much of a response at first, Buck assuming his skeptical nod was enough. At Nate's frown, he sighed, looking at anything but those wild brown eyes. Yeah, I need to go. What? He already started running off before Nate could get a word in, only to stop once he called for him anyway. Where are you going? Fists clenched, he spoke over his shoulder. Like you said for. Gummy, you'll be missing me. Nate let him go, stupidly. So incredibly stupidly, and that realization came quickly, thwarting him like a stake to the heart. He began the chase, ignoring all voices shouting for his name. Nate! Just get her home! We'll be back! He ran for another's life. He had to ignore his mother's calls, their voice drifting further and further until they couldn't reach him anymore, running too deep into the forest where no one could hurt them. It was guaranteed, wasn't it? A lone treehouse, shielded by the forest and unknown to the world. So why, despite it all, did he still fear for him? Why go through the effort of saving a rabid mutt? Eerily, the forest was quiet tonight. Assuming that it was loud, which it certainly wasn't, but something about it now seemed to appear more dead. It might have been just the time. Most animals returning home to rest after a day spent hunting, either successful and feasting or a failure and starving. Nate didn't want to think about it too much. He turned the corner. The slow river coming into view, the secret base perched right by its side. The lights were all shut off, the campfire outside looking like it hadn't been used in weeks, cobwebs dangling under the seats circling it. With a glance to the side, it finally hit him. A dirt mound sat peacefully under the expanse of trees, bordering between the clearing, with the tree house and the dense forest behind it. A young, growing sapling was planted above the soil, and while the fruit hadn't grown yet, Nick could still identify it as a strawberry bush, his heart sinking at that fact. Oh, Gummy, he whispered to himself, trying not to cry again. At least he could rest now. As for his owner, Nate hadn't a clue where he could be, quickly wiping at his eyes with his sleeve before taking a look around. He wouldn't blame him for wanting to hide. The evidence confirmed with the dark, empty state the base was left in. Even after taking a look inside, inspecting every nook and cranny, checking under the couch and above the cabinets, Buck was nowhere to be seen. He had to check the area under, where Buck originally proposed the idea for the raft. That felt like a millennium ago now. While his heart previously felt still, as if it weren't even beating, it rapidly picked up in pace. He didn't know what to expect. Buck's last words before his retreat plagued his mind, and he hated it. Descending the ladder, he forced himself to take a look, peeking around to search beyond the wooden beams. Found him. For what felt like the millionth time that day, the lump in Nate's throat was swallowed. The sight of the back of that familiar red head of hair only causing it to form all over again. The ropes tied to the balcony above, his dangling legs softly grazing against the mud below. Sat in the swing he'd gone through the effort of making himself. He was so inventive, and he didn't even know it. Now, despite his feats, he felt like nothing. Nate cleared his throat. Buck. Don't. Already he knew he saw it. One of the only changes made to the base in the surrounding area since his last visit. Originally to one memory, now serving as a reminder of Buck's own faults. Secretly, he loathed it, which only made him hate himself all the more. As quietly as he could, Nate drew closer to the swing, leaning in beyond the rope to see Buck's face. Here, in the moonlight, he could easily tell how exhausted he looked. Staring down the red suit and shorts only forced him to remember it all. The bleeding by his lips had stopped, but it certainly left a scar. While shabby, the swing was long, easily able to fit 2 people. Can I sit? Buck didn't reply with words. Instead, he shifted more to the side, squeezed into one of the ropes. Grateful. Needs to remain careful as well, making sure not to jostle the swing too much as he sat right by his side, their knees touching. He couldn't lie, he was peaceful like this, left and lonesome, listening to the water as the rapids flow by. His tone matched that serenity, laced with caution. I'm sorry about Gummy. As they anticipated, he was met with silence, mostly expecting it to stay that way. Yet Buck acknowledged it anyway. Don't apologize. Not your fault. His voice already started to crack. It's all mine. Don't say that. It was, he kept insisting. Too ashamed to look at Nate in the eye. His head jerked to face the river reeds and said, Father Giovanni said I had a choice. Either you or Gummy had to go. Revenge for blowing his tombstone off. Nate blinked at that. And he made me do it myself. Finding it difficult to breathe and talk at the same time, he persisted nonetheless, knowing Nate needed the full truth and he needed it now. The little fellow was so scared, looking at me dead in the eye. Then, Nate could picture the rest, as much as it pained him to do so. With that affirmation, he pulled Buck into silence, leaning in and providing his strongest embrace yet. Buck's eyes momentarily widened, then he broke like a vase. Nate's fingers weaved through his disheveled hair so delicately, cradling his head close as if he was something special, because to Nate, he was exactly that. And he couldn't help the flowing tears, the dam destroyed long ago, cries wailing so loudly he feared they'd both go deaf. It drained him so easily, so effortlessly. The sobs short-lived. It's not fair, he heaved, his voice muffled into Nate's shoulder, completely and utterly stained with tears. It's not. I know it isn't. Nate held him close the whole time. The least he felt he could do. Thousands of ideas spiraled in his mind, a series of them rapidly forming, his saving grace in such a trying time. Buck? He waited, smiling as the redhead responded to that name. See, your name is Buck. You'll always be Buck to me. Not Wyatt or whatever Giovanni wants you to be. Leaning a little closer, their noses gently brushed against each other's, Buck staring dumbfounded at Nate's glee. And I prefer Buck anyway. Reminds me of a deer. His face went red, Nate laughing at the result, and while feigning indifference, he scoffed and looked to the side. Yeah, well, that was kind of the point. The point? Nate's eyebrows raised a little. Leaning back, returning to take up most of his side of the swing again, but tried his best to clarify a lot coming off his odd, staring at his fidgeting hands under his lap. I actually chose that name when your mom first asked. You know, back at the Phantom Mart, he confessed, reaching up to scratch the back of his neck. Since you reminded me of a little baby deer. Looking like one, too, staring at me all that. He exaggerated his expression, forcing a pout and doe-like eyes. You. Now Nate was the one with rosy cheeks, slapping Buck's arm and erupting a chortle from him. Hey, I don't look like that. Sure you don't. Your little plush toes back home ain't helping your case. Nate wasn't sure how to defend himself after that, resorting to a playful glare, the heel of his shoe digging into Buck's boot. The comfortable silence returned. Nate trying to read every inch and second of Buck's face, watching the happiness soon shrivel up. Since it wasn't like they were cured, Nate frowned, unsure how to make it all better for good. I did get his brain whirring, though. A plan formed that he thought from the moment he discovered the truth. But at first, he simply smiled at the boy, scooting ever so slightly closer to him, the swing tilting on Buck's end. Here's what's gonna happen, okay? Another Mike Herman troll moment, but a bit less angrily said. I would hope. Both his voice and grin softened, holding out his hand for Buck to take. Moments later, and their fingers were intertwined. You're gonna get out of that stupid suit and tie, alright? Find it for your overalls or anything comfy you have. Then we can go back to my house, and my mum will surely let you stay. I'm not letting you live by yourself anymore. His other hand rose, working to fix the lopsided sunglasses Buck wore, the slightest hint of a frown forming. He was definitely in need of a new pair. These ones were cracked. Is that okay with you? Oh, is that okay with you? Oh, yep, darn tootin'. Buck rushed to nod his head, and the glasses were crooked all over again. Nate sprang out another giggle. Gods, how Buck loved that sound. Or he loved him, and he knew it needed to be shown. Slowly, he went in for another hug, feeling him melt in Nate's arms all over again. I'm so sorry, Nate, he whispered, taking a few strands from the end of the brunette's hair, lazily playing with them. For everything. Especially what I said for. I still ain't got a clue how to feel about all this, but that's okay. Nate shushed him. I know you're confused, but I don't need you to figure everything out just yet, or anything. Lifting his head up, he couldn't help his gaze drifting down to his lips. You've got more than enough time. At that, maybe for once in his life, but could hope for the future. A second chance at living that he certainly wouldn't waste. One that wouldn't be destroyed under Giovanni's control. He'd be insane to prefer that cold, dead path, rather than the road showered in nothing but love. If only he'd realized that sooner. The party lasted all night. Elizabeth's disappearance was a bother to no one. All guests happily waltzing and drinking and laughing, till they couldn't breathe anymore. Wyatt stayed perched in the ballroom's top deck the entire time, curled up by the railing and wearily leaning his head into it once it was long past his bedtime. Uncharacteristically, Father took breaks every now and then, and every time it'd be to retire to the master bedroom, tarnishing Mama's seclusion. Didn't he understand? Even Wyatt knew from the countless times she'd demand peace and quiet, often leaving the table early with her plate half finished, spending the rest of the night alone in her room. She likes it quiet. All the guests were oblivious, though, festivities carrying on. They hadn't a clue what happened. Wyatt would be forced to sleep any minute now, and maids searching through every corner and behind every curtain to find him. And it would be impossible to deny his tiredness. He struggled to sleep either way. He can't go to bed without seeing Mama. No one else accompanied him in the upstairs hallway. While most guests were starting to bid farewell now, leaving the manor entirely, others chose to stay the night. The boy's head peeked out from a corner, watching his father was kind enough to even escort one of the red-faced women to the guest bedroom. He took that opportunity, scurrying to the master bedroom without a single soul to say. Mama? Remembering his manners, he knocked first, though a lack of an answer wasn't frowned upon. She could be asleep. With that in mind, the door slowly creaked open against her will, a thin lump buried under the bed's blankets. She was dry now, hugged by her nightgown and kept warm by the duvets. A small, subtle plaster hid the new scar on her forehead. From a distance, Wyatt assumed his suspicions to be correct. With a closer inspection, he found her wide awake, staring off into space. Are you okay? He asked rather timidly, matching her old, eerie, placid mood, his gaze drifting over to the side. A glass was on the nightstand on the side of her bed, its contents long gone, only leaving faint stains and red drops. It was a funny drink he'd always been curious about, one that apparently calmed her, in her own words. That must be it, then. Neither of them said a word for a while, not even a go to bed from her part, or a lazy wave of her hand to usher him away. So, clear on his throat, he kept persisting. Why did you do that? She blinked slowly. Preferring to stare up at the ceiling, she shifted onto her back rather than her side, subtly tracing the vintage patterns with her eyes. Wyatt's own eyes softened their glare, trying not to let his temper get to him right now. Her lips parted, forcing him to stiffen. Lie down, she whispered an order, patting Giovanni's side of the bed. He frowned. But father will get... He won't. He's sleeping elsewhere tonight. He'd rather not ask for an explanation. So, with a slow nod, he orbited the bed until he reached father's side, climbing up and laying down just like he was told to. His stare never left her face, anticipating. Collecting the slow thoughts in her mind, she conjured up a coherent answer. To see Dorothy. Dorothy? He parroted, the name not ringing any bells. Oftentimes, in better circumstances than this, aside from the parties, there'd be casual visitors to the house, joining Elizabeth in the garden for strolls and afternoon tea. Was one of them named Dorothy? That didn't explain the pun, though. Maybe Dorothy was actually a fish or a toad? Dorothy. She's around your age. A little older, actually. She continued, her hands slowly sliding up to her stomach. The gods took her. The gods? He thought back to the weekly visits of the church down the road, each one requiring a prayer. Mama's prayers always tend to last longer than most. He took her. My Dorothy. They needed another angel, and she was perfect. She would have been perfect. She began rambling now, most of it tuned out from Wyatt's overwhelmed ears. He learned not to think much of it. Yes, the drinks calmed her, but it also led to this. Perfect wasn't enough. Perfect for a girl. Perfect for a daughter. She was slain by the devil himself. The devil is real. He's inside your father. That bastard. That... Mama, go to sleep. She was scaring him now. The boy shifted and stripped the blankets over her shoulders, his covering thrown off amidst her prattling. Thankfully, the extra weight helped, even if just a little. She would have had the most beautiful face, golden hair like mine. At least our lords can see her now. She gasped, a pathetic attempt at a chuckle breaking through. Giovanni doesn't deserve to witness such beauty. Maybe it was for the best then. Just like he said. No more words were uttered that night. And if it was true, what she said, within her nonsensical mourning, the father would slumber somewhere else, Wyatt didn't dare leave her side. He had to make up for Dorothy's absence, keeping a close watch of his mother as she finally stopped fighting off some much-needed rest, her arms snaking around her own stomach the entire time. The devil is real, and it's inside his father. He'd done this, if it were true. And in that truth, should it be real, it left a nauseating taste in his mouth, a sense of dread, a sense that something bad was going to happen. So yeah, so this whole time we haven't heard anything about Dorothy, who is a canon character in Yokai Watch 3, Buck's sister. And obviously, I mean, I was wondering if maybe she'd just been like completely written out of this universe, like how Noel originally didn't exist and then was written in. Would be kind of the reverse of that, but no, something else has happened. Well, from those kind of ramblings, we don't really know the precise reason why she was killed, assuming she was killed. I mean, other than Giovanni being a bastard, I guess, but I do think he probably would have had some kind of greater motive there. All of this seems like it was planned from the start from him. And then, obviously, we finally got a reconciliation between Nate and Buck that we've all been waiting for. And now we'll see how things continue from here because Giovanni, I mean, he's still there. He's encountered that deer spirit. Don't really know how that's going to go. But there's not going to be any real peace until he's gone. So, anyway, Chapter 19. Yours sincerely, Mom. And the summary is, you should hate her for haunting him, but it was impossible, no matter how hard he tried. The bruise wasn't too bad. Thanks to her exhaustion, Noelle didn't complain a single bit, barely wincing as her father wrapped the gauze around her neck. It wasn't exactly needed, per se, more so a cover for the damage caused. No questions were definitely preferred over even just a few. Her father had stuck a movie on for them to watch, a random pick from a selection available. Yet it proved to serve as background noise rather than the primary source of stimulation. A few minutes with him on the couch and she was out like a light, getting some much needed rest while drifting off to his humming, knowing she was safe in his arms. But her mother, like always, couldn't take a breather as easily. Come on. Come on. She whispered to herself, eyes glued to the phone in her hands. She was bewitched by text messages or lack thereof. She sent a sea of them, thumbs frantically gliding over the keys, no non-return on the receiving end. In a hushed tone, her father called for her, hovering his wrinkled hand over one of Noelle's ears, letting her mother pace for a short second longer before intervening further. Nadia, honey, it's okay. Why won't he just pick up the damn phone? She nearly hit herself with her own device, instead sinking to the couch and diving headfirst into Harvey's free arm, to which she curled and pulled her closer. The two of them nearly sighed in unison. Harvey's less audible as his lips brushed against the top of her head, leaving a chaste kiss. You're stressing too much, love. You'll end up with grey hairs. She huffed, not needing to look up to know his own strands of silver were only growing more each day. Oh, don't you stop. Instead, she set up with his gentle slap to the arm, warranting getting her phone taken away. Probably for the best. It was driving her insane. It wasn't normal for a mother to worry, especially when neither parents had any clue what happened, and the only one available to give an answer at the moment being far too drained to do so. The other, she barely even knew who he was. Immediately her heart dropped to her stomach, willing the urge to throw up. What kind of mother doesn't keep a proper eye on her children? And this wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the first time she's been tested and failed. With that in mind, her glossy eyes drifted over to her daughter, reaching out to caress her cheek, brushing away all the stray blue hairs. Any ideas for what's going on with them? She murmured, a question wafting in the air, remaining unanswered for a long while. They'd originally been gunning for the forest, best assumed their children in their horrifyingly curious minds would venture out there, despite all the warnings. To find him tumbling out of the abandoned manor, their daughter too weak to stand, their son chasing after someone he declared to have preferred to forget, it was nothing short of frightening. And here they sat, eagerly anticipating his walk through that front door. Neither of them knew what to say for the entire journey. While most times Nate preferred silence, here it was somewhat unbearable. Buck's eyes stayed downcast, paying attention to all the small details of the pavement, so Nate made sure to keep watch of their surroundings. Even then, they were safe. At least that was what he told himself. Safe, albeit unsure. The kiss was all he could think about, worrying that Buck only saw it as a way to calm him down after everything that happened. But Nate meant it with all his heart, and it killed him to think it was believed otherwise, forged by Giovanni and his spiteful ways. Curse him. Sight of the house up ahead made Nate bite his lip, still unsure of what the best approach for this was. Unlike Giovanni, it wasn't like his parents to show such anger, yet he still worried they wouldn't exactly be welcoming now that Buck was in the picture again. How wrong he was. The two now faced with Nadia's frantic squeaks and distressed doting. There you are! Are you alright? Her voice was raised louder than she possibly intended, reaching a hand over to Nate's cheek and Buck's shoulder. The two exchanged a glance, Buck slowly copying Nate's own movements as he gave a nod. Neither of them sure about what she'd already been told or what to bring up right here, right now. Could Buck stay here tonight? Of course! Is that a question? I'd rather you not go outside for another week at least. She let out a heavy sigh, brushing some fingers through her already dishevelled hair. With how stressed she looked, Buck felt his heart drop further and further, and almost have told her everything then. But in actuality, she showed less guilt and more confusion, all the fuss forcing her to wake, slowly raising her head from her father's chest. Nate? No, oh, God, Noelle! Nate persisted he'd go to her rather than forcing her to tumble to him. His hands pressing down her shoulders to ensure she stayed put. He was already testing his luck. First with a nickname, now forcing her to stay seated. But she was either too tired or to care, or just letting it slide just this once. It was like she could hear the alarms blaring in his head just from seeing the bandage alarm. I'm fine. Dad said it's nothing to worry about. Well, I didn't exactly say that, he sighed, taking another peek at his daughter's neck, his already aching soul only chipping apart even more. You nearly gave me a heart attack, Nosy. I know. Sorry. The air grew significantly thicker, a feeling neither twin had been used to as of late, besting it to be a side effect of a disheartening memory. Noel had to blame someone for it. Fortunately for her, he stood right there, unusually timid, left him as lonesome in the hallway. He didn't even find it in himself to glare back. Nate caught onto the one-sided dispute right away. I'm just gonna get Buck settled, okay? He escorted him up the stairs without another word. That night, Nate ensured his bed looked as neat as it could be. With Buck in the bathroom, getting changed to a fresh pair of pajamas, gave the other boy a chance to finally clean up a bit. He'd been holding off as of late, not really understanding the need when he already knew where everything was amidst the mess, but all of a sudden he couldn't help but feel self-conscious about him. Maybe because he wanted to look like a good example for Buck? Silly, considering the secret base itself wasn't strictly the tidiest box in the world. But he didn't want Buck to live in filth anymore. His mind was flooded with all kinds of thoughts as he laid out the sleeping bag on the floor. He should have known sooner. He should have figured it out, should have helped him before it was too late. Maybe if he tried reaching out after the argument, things wouldn't have gotten so bad. Since there was no way in hell he could blame Buck for any of it, for any of his actions, thieving, lying, yelling, any of it. All he could see was good. In its best and worst sense. Hey! He expected Buck to be on the other side of the door. Nate's eyes drawn to it upon its slow, careful swing, so surprised to find his mother instead, abruptly cut off by his own shock, suddenly unsure of any of the words he could possibly say. But no matter what, he tried to force them out. Mom, sorry for, at the mansion. Nate, sweetie. Hmm? She took a long pause, Nate remaining idle even as she slowly walked over, unable to detect any anger or weight in her gentle stroll. She could see at the edge of the bed, patting the spot next to her a couple of times, after allowing a few seconds of silence to pass, and soon enough, Nate lowered himself to sit next to her. It was like he could feel her eyes scan over him, emitting a greater thump from his heart that he swore he could hear. The outside world got quieter too, his mother's hand reaching for his cheek in a similar fashion, slightly covering his eardrums, and he was forced to listen to that heartbeat drum with such force the sticks might stab straight through. Did Giovanni do this? The words left a sour taste in Nate's mouth, hardly discarded when his squeak was too meek, pushing his face into her hand. It was all him. All of it. Even with Buck, when he... Mom, You're all over the place, darling, she sighed, effortlessly pulling him closer, practically feeling the exhaustion radiating off him. Shh. You don't have to tell me now. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. I don't think I should be the one to tell. He sniffled and choked the words out, tilting his head, his face scrunching up as her own gradually looking more pained. He didn't let himself look in the mirror when he was brushing his teeth earlier. He wanted to see the state he must have been in, face red and eyes puffy. Buck knows more than I do, but if he doesn't want to say anything, then I will. But, Mom, please, He had to pause for a moment to catch his breath. He's good. He's okay. I said before, it's not true. And of course she believed him, showing that with a nod, but that didn't magically make the doubt disappear. All she wondered was what could have possibly happened. As it stands, with such little information, none of the conclusions he thought of made sense. Tomorrow. Okay? Tomorrow. He had the answer out just in time before a big yawn could interrupt it. Glancing to the door. How's Noelle? Oh, she's fine. Stubborn. You know how she is. Nadia whispered in case the daughter would overhear. She's staying in her parents' bed for the night. The master bedroom substitutes. But you tell me ASAP if you need anything, okay? No holding it off. No secrets. I know. Finally, someone fumbled with the bathroom door, and Nate's mother took it as a cue to leave. Not without a little peck to the forehead. Night, sweetie. Night, night. He yawned again, using that hand that rubbed his eye to give a small wave as well. And he was soon alone again. Short-lived, thankfully. Not a lot of time passed until the door creaked open once more, Buck peering into the room with plain pajamas Nate thought he'd like. Most of his clothes were red, but we still had a couple of outboards out here and there, including a muted green pair. While the sleeves looked a little short on Buck, the redhead didn't seem to mind. Looks nice. Nate nodded with a bashful grin, already feeling the colour coming back to his cheeks. He forced out a quiet laugh, pointing back to the bed in the corner of the room. You can take the bed if you want. I can have the sleeping bag. At first, refusing was obvious, silently given by Buck's small frown. Yeah, I knew you'd say no. Nate shook his head, stifling a grin as Buck looked down to the floor, purposely avoiding the brunette's grin. But I promise, the bed is a lot more comfy than the floor. And you know a lot more than me. Gentle as he could be, he took one of Buck's hands into his own, appreciating his compliance to follow. He guided him to the bed, the soft mattress shifting a little under his weight. See? And the pillows and stuff are still kind of new since we moved here. Look! He made a demonstration, shifting to rest his knees on the floor, leaning over so his cheek was pressed up against the two pillows. Comfy. You're really insisting on me taking the bed, huh? Come on, you haven't even tried it. Nate huffed, deciding to pursue a more forceful approach, pushing the side of Buck's head. He resisted a little, expected, though soon gave it up with a dramatic sigh, lying down properly. Told you. For a moment, Buck's eyes went wide, relishing in the comfort even when Nate was most likely exaggerating it. But to him, who'd been starved of such amenities, it was no overreaction at all. Even relying on an old couch he found dumped in the scrapyard to pray for a good night's sleep. This was everything. And he still couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe the boy who grinned up with him with so much kindness right now, so much love. Thanks, Nate, he murmured, fighting back the urge to sniffle. No problem. Just let me know if you need anything, okay? He reassured him, reaching for the duvet to make sure he was fully covered. An instinct traced his mind, his fingers hovering over Buck's face as if to brush his hair back, to give him a small peck good night on the forehead. No. Too early, thought. His lips remained sealed shut, the two exchanging awkward, clueless blinks. Well, good night. Yeah, good night. Buck watched him switch off the table lamp and crawl away, slipping under the sleeping bag with a gentle sigh. They must have been a living radiator, he was convinced, because what other reason was there for him to feel so cold now that he was within a meter's reach? Strong winds blew tonight, Buck's gaze fixed onto the closed curtains, barely shifting as the closed window protected him. That's right, they had protection. A safe haven amidst all that happened tonight. He had no reason to be scared, as if he was some little kid. And yet he still shook, feeling his hands quiver, even with the blankets to cling to, unable to stop. It wasn't unforeseen. The perceptive Nate roared over to face him again, Buck avoiding having to look at him with a quick close of the eyelids. You okay? I'm fine, he stammered out, swallowing his fear so the pit in his stomach could deal with it instead, knowing he was stuck in a corner. Actually, could you come up here? Nate's eyes fluttered. He best assumed the Buck would want time to himself, but suddenly this was an easy thing to reject. Quite the opposite, actually. Squirming out from the sleeping bag, he reached for the lamp to momentarily switch it on again, ensuring he wouldn't accidentally topple Buck or knee him in the stomach or anything like that. No, he left quite a bit of space between them, unsure how close Buck wanted him, shifting to lay down against the edge of the bed. And once settled, rearranging and pulling up the duvets to cover both of them, both of their faces turned scarlet. Maybe the fact the feeling was mutual made it slightly more bearable. You're gonna fall off the edge like that. No, it's okay. Nate insisted otherwise nonetheless, despite his back slowly sinking towards the floor, the mattress trying its hardest to support him. Nate, Buck coughed. He didn't ask him to come up here just to feel less comfortable, frowning at that assumption, and he already lifted himself to lean his weight on his elbows, preparing to move over. Then swap. You take the wall, and I'll... No, just... With a frantic shake of the head and watching, waving hands, Nate scooted ever so slightly closer, taking baby steps, pausing after every shift, and eventually he didn't feel like he was about to fall off the bed anymore. Is this okay? They were fine just as they were, but still, Buck subtly edged closer. You don't gotta distance yourself. I know, but Nate sighed, trying to think of a way to word it without coming off as rude or awkward. Since my God, he felt nothing short of bashful for the whole scenario. Thought you might want space or something. Buck paused, blinking. I wanted space. I wouldn't have asked you to come up here. Right, yeah. Nate wanted to punch himself, abruptly shutting off the table lamp before Buck could catch onto his prominent red cheeks, which refused to fade away no matter how hard he wished for them to. He should have known. Shouldn't have been so stupid. At least that confirmation made his ideas come easier. The thought of bringing them to life was also more relaxed. Even in the close proximity, Buck continued to shake, uncontrollable from the looks of it, his pupils darting to all four corners of the room as if on the lookout, paranoid. Nate couldn't stand to see him so terrified for the whole night, and at this rate, every other night afterwards. So, his hand hovered by Buck's face, jerking back slightly at every twitch or glance, unable to tell what the redhead was thinking of, or unable to tell what the redhead was thinking of it right now. And yet, he went for it anyway, gently caressing the side of his head. Is this okay? In reality, Buck wanted to scream, but under the fear like he'd come to expect. This feeling was more fluttery, for lack of a better word, and it already left him craving for more. So he must be selfish too. And in growing self-consciousness, already spotting a leaf that Nate pulled out the unruly locks. Solidarity though. It could be worse. A slight frown came to Nate's face, suddenly aware of how unkempt Buck's hair truly was. Yet the last thing he could feel was disgusted by it. He didn't want to imagine how hard it was for Buck, and cleaning his hair, of all things, must not have been a priority. Come on. Sit up for a sec. The sudden request surprised him, yet Buck agreed to it nonetheless, seeing how even after it all, he couldn't find himself to be tired. As much as his body begged for rest, his mind wasn't up for it. Nate yanked the handle of one of the drawers in the nightstand, his fingers gliding over to the contents, rummaging for something, so he eventually found what he was looking for. He pulled out his hairbrush, setting it off to the side, and then left the bed for a moment to drag the She dragged the small bin by the desk over to them, sitting on the floor beside the mattress. Let me know if it's too rough, okay? Huh? Buck could barely respond before he had fingers digging through his hair again. Nate sat sitting directly behind him to work at the pesky strands. It didn't exactly hurt like they'd come to expect. It was more ticklish than anything, his shoulders tensing up and a quiet snort escaping his nose once Nate touched the back of his neck. The brunette couldn't help his grin. Are you ticklish? No! No, I ain't. I ain't. But Buck didn't sound very convincing, even to himself, looking down and allowing Nate to continue his work. He almost couldn't believe how much nature he found hiding in those ginger locks. Leaves were the main culprit, sticking to any and every strand they could find, sometimes accompanied by a small twig or two, or a piece of frail, flaky moss. Anything that didn't belong to Buck, Nate tossed into the bin, and after scanning it all and ensuring he got everything, he brushed his hair as gently as he could, being careful with the several knots. There, no more stupid stuff in your hair, Nate beamed, stifling a chuckle at the way Buck's hair still appeared to be a frizzy mess despite the brush, the curls falling into what looked like a cloud. In the morning, I can show you how to work the shower. Gets all the dirt off as well. Buck couldn't nod in case he'd messed up Nate's fussing, so a small hum worked as a substitute. Probably shouldn't be on your bed then. I never said that. His frown soon returned, a heavy sigh passing through as well. He was struggling, unsure how to make him feel better about himself without only serving reminders of what appeared to be the norm for Buck for so many years. He shouldn't have to live like that. Nate shouldn't have to be luckier. There. Soon finished, Nate shoved the hairbrush back into the drawer, scrolling over to sit in front of Buck once again. Originally aiming for his face, Nate opted for a more careful approach. Still unsure how close Buck wanted him to be, and instead rested his hands on his shoulders. His head tilted down to get a better look at his downcast expressions, the most prominent feature being the bag sagging under his eyes. Sweetie, you're exhausted. The pet name rolled off his tongue so easily, a few seconds passing by until Nate finally realized what he said. Buck's head lifted in response as well, and for a moment Nate could see the light in him come back. Ah, sorry. He strove to explain himself, stumbling over each and every word that came tumbling out, his hands flying off Buck's shoulders. My mum says that to my dad a lot, and, when he's tired from work. And I was just thinking about that, I guess. Buck just laughed, intensifying Nate's flushed cheeks and confused, frazzled look. It helped sap away more of his energy, the little ounces of it that he still had left. And before he got collapsed back into the mattress, Nate instead pulled him in, his shoulder acting as a pillow, arms like a blanket. And once again, Buck wondered if this was all okay. The only image able to be pictured in the startled, incoherent mind being his father, and his usual painful, revolted look, the only expression he ever seemed to know how to show in front of his son. But glancing up at Nate, seeing his warm, genuine smile, Buck's favourite feature about him, it was a small plaster over a fatal wound. You won't let me go. Delirious or not, unreasonably clingy forever or sticking to his unreasonably clingy or forever sticking to his true self, neither of the boys could determine the correct answer, stuck on what was right or wrong. The answer for Buck's personal question, however, Nate knew it right away. Of course, he murmured, gradually leaning down until his head hit the pillows again, dragging Buck down with him while keeping him close the entire time. It was all still so strange to him, just as much as it was for the other. That morning, he wanted nothing to do with Buck, nearly able to forget his existence entirely. Yet here he was now, laying in Nate's arms, the least the brunette could do for the turmoil he'd learned and watched that day. It replayed in his head constantly, like torture. Promise me you won't. Nate's voice always had to break apart, struggling to get out his desperate plea. Won't try shooting yourself again. Please, Buck, please. I'm right here if it ever gets bad again. He hated hearing Nate sound so broken. He hated how it made something inside him tick, piecing together and screaming at him that those feelings were raw and real, that Nate really cared after all this time. I won't, he answered simply, too tired to put much effort into his responses, no matter how real they were. Don't lose your head, doll. Good enough for him, he supposed. Nate just nodded and tightened his grip, a little abashed from the pet name. A terrible day overall, no doubt. Yet it still shone a light in the end. He was just glad the Buck was here, where he knew he was safe, rather than sleeping further in a grave with an overgrown within an overgrown, forgotten garden. Buck? Hmm? He'd nearly dozed off by now, responding with a quiet hum. Nate's thoughts brought him back to the grave, the one where Wyatt rested. Though hazy, a vague memory missed the sea of others just like it. One detail stuck out. The gravestone, he whispered, sounding a little out of breath, and the sharp gasp hit in the top of Buck's head right afterwards. Said October 31st was Wyatt's birthday, didn't it? Your. Nate's head snapped to the side, his hand slapping the nightstand with an abrupt thud. Waking up Buck a little more, he felt his phone, raising it to automatically wake. 12:10. He reached out, defeat laced in his tone. Buck, it was just. What, birthday? Nate looked just as confused as he did, and far more disheartened. Yeah, why didn't you say anything? Was I supposed to? The remark left them in a strange silence, Buck's blank, slightly muddled expression only serving to torment. Then it hit him. Buck must have grown up to not believe birthdays were a big deal, as crushing as it was. Never mind. They let him off the hook, simply pulling Buck closer and ensuring they were both comfortable. Just sleep now. I'll be here. And let me know if you need anything else. He hardly returned a satisfactory nod before the slumber took him. Nate's fingers forming a rhythmic motion in Buck's hair, shown to be far easier now it had been brushed. Happy birthday, he whispered, his chin resting atop Buck's head. His last thoughts before drifting off as well were brainstorming, coming up with ways to celebrate, things to give, to make up for it all. Too focused on his own plans to see UFO stone's hazy glow on the nightstand. It had been a while since it did that. It was the best sleep he swore he'd ever had, and yet his mind was still foggy. The warm mug of hot chocolate in his hands helped to ground him, scaring away the chills. Truthfully, it was his first time trying it, looking sheepish when he told Nate's dad and evolving into embarrassment when the man started to look a little frightened. But no, it was actually pretty good. The sweet taste, a nice change. The two adults occupied the living room, seated by the fireplace. All eyes sat on Buck, who sat opposite to them. They gave him all the time he needed, the boy silently thankful for their patience, but the idea of it soon translating into frustration still gnawed at him. He needed to talk, and he needed to now. Unbeknownst to them, Nate sat at the top of the stairs, but he wasn't sure if he would make out the words very well, given the door was closed and he was not the best at deciphering muffled voices. Spying? Jeez! His skin nearly left his bones, his head whizzing around till he followed Noelle. She dropped down beside him, clearly feeling proud of her little scare, clearly put on display by Nate's frown. I'm not spying, he murmured. I'm back up. She didn't bite. Back up? Yeah, if Buck needs me. He took a brief moment to inspect their bandage, shifting closer to the wall and further from her. Don't talk too much. It'll hurt your neck. It's not that bad. Look. She stopped herself before her voice raised further, sighing and slumping most of her weight onto her knees, bringing him enough from the penultimate stair to the final one. How long is Buck planning on staying? Nate shrugged. We'll see what Mum and Dad say. What? So he's telling them he's... Before she could continue, she leaned forward and whispered, ensuring the secret stayed confidential. He's telling them he's a Hazeltine? Shh. I don't know. We'll see. Nate muttered back, ignoring Noel's groan. Shit, what about Gummy? The book gets into an orphanage or something like that. Or we let him stay here and Dad's allergies run wild. Nate couldn't look at her, his insistence on avoiding eye contact far too obvious. Nate? He felt as if he was about to fall, tumbling down the staircase, weighed down with guilt and despair that kept pushing him further and further. His front teeth gnawed into the palm of his hand, silencing all squeaks and possible cries, knowing he needed to blurt it out sooner or later. Gummy's dead, Nate mumbled. Barely above a whisper, he was still enough to ring in his ears. Noel prayed she heard that wrong. What? He the suppressed voice come from the living room spooked him, and all of a sudden he felt like he might throw up, and yet he made a beeline for his room, far enough to let all the noise die out. Apart from hers. Anywhere he went, she was bound to follow. Hey! Holding back both the wobble in her voice and the tears starting to break past, Noel swiftly caught up and guided her brother to sit down on the bed, doing the same, refusing to let go of his hand. What do you mean? It was Giovanni. Hardly audible, Nate leaned to the side until his head landed on Noel's shoulder. The rest of his report dying in his throat. He sat up with a weary nod. Nor bit her lip, her feelings hardly solid. Death was a known parasite in the family, and she had only herself to blame for that. Yet, ironically, she had hardly a clue to what to feel when meeting it herself. But she'd be lying if she said she didn't love that cat in their short time spent. And in simpler terms, she won't get to see it again. Like a long holiday across the universe without turning back. God damn it. She sighed, thinking of what either their parents would do, replicating on the gentle play of Nate's hair, allowing him hold on until he didn't want to anymore. While he did mourn, fear was overriding it, mistaken for pure grief. He was terrified. Terrified of the one confession Buck made that clung to him like a disease. Either Nate or Gummy had to go, and Buck chose the latter. And with no one else left to choose, only one close relationship left to tear apart. It was the first time in Nate's life that he feared for being himself. But he didn't dare tell Saul, at least not until this Giovanni was dead and buried the second time. For good, this time. He wouldn't be allowed to leave, allowed anywhere out of his parents' sight. His parents or Noel's sight. By the time he'd finally managed to convince them otherwise, they'd already be dead by Giovanni's hand. Nate? His mother called out from the bottom of the stairs, both twins peering up like meerkats. Nate! Come on down, sweetie. That'll be Buck. Nate knew instantly, sniffing and reluctantly pulling away from his sister, finally letting go of her hand. He previously agreed with Buck that the redhead would ask of him during the talk if needed. Noel let him go, chewing her nail to fill the silence he left behind. The thud of his socks pattering down the stairs filtered into the room. By the time Nate finally reached Buck, Noel's attention drifted elsewhere. On the nightstand, faintly, the UFO stone glowed, causing her brows to furrow. Nate's hand was empty for long, resting in Buck's and withstanding every squeeze, no matter how hard. Buck didn't have a plan or a script in place. He just spelled out anything that came to mind. The house, the Hazeltine, Wyatt Hazeltine, that was him, or it used to be. He didn't want to think of it anymore. Elizabeth, his mother, who for some impossible reason he still had faith in. Giovanni, his father, him and his cult of yokai, planning God knows what and selecting him as the heir. He'd succeed after the disastrous massacre of his grave, revenge given, which Buck didn't dabble on much, if at all. As if they need to know, all I need to know was after that day, Giovanni's faith in his son shriveled. Because even after the fight in the rain, Buck still clung to that love, that sinful, mortifying love, in the eyes of all that had faith in him. Nate was the exception, his light. And it all ended in begging, pleading for mercy, repeating sorry over and over until he lost his voice. They forgave every single apology, their apology non-existent, even as he wept into their son's arms. In the end, he didn't regret telling the truth. The fresh air mixed with the enclosed space felt nice, calming compared to everything he's blurted out moments prior. That was quite a few minutes ago, yet the recovery process was slow, every shuddering breath taking several seconds to end. Internally, despite the shock, he did feel better. The unwavering support and watchful eyes looking out for him being a strange sight at first, yet one he quickly warmed up to. But knew he probably said more than he should have. He needed to. He just needed to get it all out. And now that the heavy weight was spilled, he certainly felt lighter, well prepared for the grander troubles he knew were inevitable. What suffocating forces will come crashing down? But for now, he appreciated the breather. He didn't want to stay in solitude forever. Mrs. Adams must have somehow read his mind. Oh, never realized you were out here. She chuckled sheepishly, a watering can in her hand as he approached the rows of large strawberry bushes, making sure each one was perfectly hydrated. They'd better bear fruit soon. It won't be long until the cool temperatures will be too harsh for them to batter through. Buck never noticed the bushes up until now, his guts tying into a knot at the sight. He preferred not to make a big deal out of it. After all, he'd already told her. Just needed a minute. He sat for a vague mumble, the soles of his boots gently tapping against each other. The woman clicked her tongue, taking in what he said before returning to the plants. Buck couldn't make out the whispers she gave them, but he assumed them to be words of encouragement of some kind. He found himself staring, snapping his gaze to back down with the thud of the watering can being set down to the grass. Buck, she began, slowly shifting to sit by him. both their backs pressed up against the dark oak fence. Is there anything I can do for you? No. No, it's alright. You're already doing enough. He insisted without hesitation fast, squeezing the UFO stone dangling against his chest, his fist encasing it entirely. You don't have to do anything else. Alright. Though charming, eliciting a chuckle from her, the way Buck looked and acted so jumpy right now still brought out some concern. More than some. He was all the whole family could think about at the moment. I'm sorry, kiddo. I can't imagine what it's been like for you. He just shrugged. I mean, all bad. No one to pass me around until the UFO showed up. Before that, it was okay. You should still have people looking out for you, though. She made the best attempts at persuading him, her protective instincts kicking in, even for someone who wasn't her own son. No kid should have to be alone, but I understand why you'd think that. Rubbing the bridge of her nose, she sank back against the fence, a content sigh following her close behind. Since my mother wasn't the best either. Nah. He looked a couple of times, shifting to fully face her, surprised she was still smiling. No, Harvey needs dad, was scared to death of her. I was too, deep down, but at least I was better at hiding it. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, she scolded herself, focusing back on the anxious boy by her side. You said you still have faith in your mother, even after everything? I think that might have just been a little kid in me talking. It was a sheepish thing to admit, distracting himself by scratching the back of his hand, focusing on the blades of grass slowly waving by his feet. Mama was sometimes nice when others weren't looking. Sometimes. That's mostly all I can remember, those parts. But her, Pearl and Maud, dear, I hardly remember what she looks like. Still, I'm guessing that means, for the love of God. He pulled his knees up to his chest, resting his chair on them, murmuring into the skin, too afraid to say it so openly. I miss her. Now that his shoulders loosened, weighed down by an overflowing sympathy. It wasn't completely clear what she could tell him at first, settling with her hand rubbing his back, and even then it seemed risky at first, unsure how he'd react. He didn't seem to mind, however, and she kept that steady pace as her other hand reached for her phone, quickly typing. Soon she found the result, showing him. Her? Buck's heart skipped a beat once he looked up. Multiple images were displayed, the search engine barely struggling given the family's prior economic prowess. Mama! He snatched the phone from Nadia's hand, punching over it and holding on with an iron grip, his stare locked onto the still photos. I'm guessing that's a yes. Initially shocked, his reaction more extreme than she expected, she couldn't hold it against him. Even if the idea of it all made her heart ache. Well, she's very beautiful. You have her eyes. That realization never sunk in till now. Originally, he'd learned to be a carbon copy of his father, but now, including recent events, he was obviously weren't so parallel. Really? Of course you do. You're the spitting image. She grinned, glad to see a smile matching her own, even if his was a little weaker. In reality, it made it all slightly more bearable. The thought of this being his only memory of his mother, through impersonal photographs and not her actual physical presence. It's still a terrible taste in her mouth. That and a desire for care, a need. No matter what happens, he started, gently lowering the phone, continuing to explain despite already noticing the tears welling up in his own eyes. No matter what has happened, it doesn't make you any less worthy of love. Of love, affection, and joy, and everything that seems like that it seems like everyone else already has. And even if a pause was made despite her best efforts, still a little surprised by the whole prospect, though never disgusted. Even if you're gay, Buck, that doesn't change a thing. You deserve just as much care as anyone else, and you especially deserve Nate, she laughed. He's head over heels for you, dear. Utterly sick, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Her words were cut off by his choked up sniffles, after telling himself just this morning that he wouldn't cry today. No matter what he faced, what he told, what he heard, he wouldn't allow himself to cry. A frail declaration limply sprawled over an even weaker dam, sending in the flood. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm trying not to... Her own restraint crumbled as well. The sight unbearable no matter how little time she'd spent to know him. Aw, honey. It all felt so natural to her, able to just hoist him into her arms as if he were her own son, and he relished in it just as much. He missed this. He missed something he'd never known, a warm embrace Elizabeth never provided. It left him wondering why. Why it was so difficult, how she looked down on him like all the others, mistaking him for a roach more than a meek, frightened child. And it was a battle between hatred and pity, which crashed into each other every other day. Which crashed into each other every day. Now in a hug that came so easily for someone who barely even knew him, compared to a lack thereof from someone he had known his whole life. The former won. I'm not sure what happened next. Nadia admitted when she pulled away, brushing the tears streaming down Buck's cheeks. But you're a good kid, Buck. Never forgive that, ever. And I swear I'm not letting you out my sight until this Giovanni is dead. For real this time. Just like how we should put trackers on the twins. You're not gonna do all that. That forced a shaky laugh out of him. We'll stay put, promise. Good, and I'll talk to my husband about it. That way you have an extra pair of eyes watching you all. She made a motion with her fingers to emphasize her point. The floor still stuck out. But she said you were living in a treehouse, right? Maybe there's stuff there you still need? Oh, right, yeah. He patted down his pockets as if he kept all the belongings in the small, worn-down sleeves, finding only lit. Can you hold off on the trackers for a bit? Can I go back? She'd been expecting that question, still taking time to think about her answer. Sure, but I'm coming with you, she warned. Just in case. Buck led the charge, strolling right through East Pine to get to the desolate forest, the overwhelming amount of trees helping to purify the eerie atmosphere. This side of town, now declared officially haunted, rarely receives visitors nowadays, everyone being drawn into North Beach's town hall instead, whether it be to protest or to search for an uneasy sense of security. Declared officially haunted. Is that an exaggeration, or is that literally like a government department in this universe, which is like, yep, there's a new car here, so we're gonna officially declare this place a haunted. Overall, Buck benefited from it, with less chances of being caught, but he shouldn't have to worry about that now he was living with the Adams. The Adams home. He still wasn't entirely sure how to feel about the whole arrangement. Nate wasn't a worry, somehow. The brunette was more than pleased. His parents were harder to read. Sure, there were frowns, especially when Buck told them the truth, but they looked to be more worried than enraged. How stupid of them, he thought. It'd only be a matter of time before Giovanni would return, and it all come crashing down to Buck once more. He is his father's son, parallel, the splitting image. You wonder how much Elizabeth's influence tried to break through. And if Giovanni's lust for control was as vital as he said, it was impossible for Buck to assume he was going to let this go. Buck! And they brought him back to reality. Willing the bad ideas away from munching at his ability to think. He tucked up Buck's sleeve, steering his head to face and imagining the smallest of smiles as a vacant look in the boy's eyes drifted away. Is it? Nate's words trailed off, and he suddenly glanced over his shoulder towards the following footsteps. Anya kept her distance while still remaining relatively close, promising privacy, well, as much as she could give without endangering the two children. In truth, it did worry Buck quite a lot. He wanted to kick himself for thinking it. The secret base was for him and Nate, kept a secret. And something in his gut was telling him it should stay that way. Since maybe then, after seeing the state of the shaka itself, or the stolen goods hardly handled with care and the dirt mound resting on the clearing's edge. Mrs. Adams, he spoke before he could think too much, the trio halting in unison, but turning around and wobbling that. Can it just be me and Nate? The base ain't far from here, just... Buck, he winced at her hesitation, both of them turning their heads to peer into the surrounding woods. As if anything obvious would stick out amongst the identical pine trees. I'll give you 5 minutes. She set up with that, quickly pestering Nate at the last minute by rushing to him, checking his wrist sag in relief at the watch to stare back. But you come here as soon as you think that something's off. We know. It's okay, the son insisted, which she decided was good enough, even with her disfavour to it. Rushing off the dirt from a nearby rock, sitting down with her hands on her lap, she watched her two boys leave, shoulders slumped. The base was identical to how they left her, albeit a bit messier than usual. After the talk on the swing, Buck could search everywhere for his overalls and rushed to throw them on. And now he wasn't sure if they were in either the washing machine, back at the Adams residence, or declared beyond saving and thrown out. He'd felt guilty now, afraid to make a mess of Nate's sweater as he tackled the state at the base, his bottom lip bitten as he feared he had to bid farewell to it. As shabby as it was the only true home he'd ever known. But he knew it was wishful thinking to stay here permanently ever again. He couldn't. Not when it now made him feel so queasy. What about the record player? Nate asked with his hands already full of trinkets Buck might want to keep. the two glancing over to the specified item. Looks expensive. Shh. Ain't no way we're carrying that. Buck chuckled, sounding a little pained. He'd adore the thing. Like Nate had guessed before, it was his prized possession, his best deal. But you knew that pawn shop would question him should he bring it in. Its worth was worthless. I'll come back for it later, was the final decision. Nate wasn't so sure. I to guess what else he would have bring, given his empty hands. His attempts to distract himself with scratches to the wrist or bites inside his cheek were also a cause for concern. What are you thinking about? Buck made a tired noise, still audible in close proximity, and following it was Nate shifting closer, holding a cheeky smile. Come on, talk to me. His elbow nearly touched his, then laying the items in his arms forward to his lap as he directed all his attention to Buck. I ain't worried about nothing. Don't lose your head. Buck sighed, failing to sound convincing, even to himself. He was better off explaining, for Nate's sake. Just spoke to your mom in the backyard. After the talk, Buck nodded, prompting Nate to continue. About what? He watched the taller boy clench and unclench his fists, scrunching up his jeans. The unfamiliar fabric feeling like sandpaper to the skin. Buck's mouth opened, but it took a while for the words to spill out, dumbly staring at his lap, shamefully. About Mama. She showed me photos on her phone. Nick could have guessed that, seeing how Buck looked when he mentioned her before. Did you miss her? It's okay to miss her, you know. Immediately Buck shook his head. It ain't. I should be hating her and wishing she'd die again and again, or meeting judgment or whatever crap she got taught by the church. But I can't. Gradually, his sudden turned to a wobble, his face hiding into his pulled up knees and chin. For fuck's sake, Nate. No, it's okay. It's okay. Nate caught Buck just before he could fall to the floor, repositioning his head to rest on the other's shoulder and wishing for everything else to go away. For it to be just them, to give Buck a slither of hope that everything will be okay. Because deep down it was hopeless. Giovanni was bound to find them, whether it be sooner or later, and they were running their luck dry. So Nick didn't blame Buck for still clinging on to the other parent. Any feelings he had right now, no matter how disconcerted, were justified. All he needed to do was guide Buck to a better tomorrow. I'm still here, you know. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. I won't. And if Giovanni has a problem with that, and if Elizabeth wasn't there to help you when she had the chance, to screw them both. Screw Hazeltown. Accompanying a frown, Buck's eyes switched open. But, nope. You're just Buck. Nate refused to have it any other way, gritting at Buck's resistance, planting a soft kiss into his hair for good measure. Make sure that sticks in your head. I'll be outside, alright? Carry as much as you want, and we can get the rest another day. With a twinging heart, Buck watched Nate take off. Out the door and down the ladder, hearing a muffled, subtle curse under his breath, once a few items dropped to the grass. The burning in his cheeks was delayed, but dear God, he still begged for it to end, hiding them in his palms. How he wished not to freeze up so easily, to return all the hugs and kisses Nate dished out as if it were charity. Even in death, Elizabeth's actions, or lack thereof, were bound to eat him alive. He set up with carrying as many sci-fi comics as he could handle, alongside a few tattered t-shirts through enough to keep stealing Nate's. Mountains of supplies and other knickknacks all gathered from years of collecting still waited to be rehomed, unsure if that day would ever come. Buck paid them no mind, shutting the door with a slight force on the way out, skipping a few steps on the ladder and jumping down to Nate's level. Your mom said 5 minutes, he brought up randomly, staring off into the trees. Yeah? She did. Nate tilted his head. Do you need more? Maybe. I'll try to be quick, Before Nate had a chance to talk, Buck threw his hand into his grasp, squeezing it tightly. I want to go to the house. This is the last time, you hear? Promise? The house? Buck didn't need a second opinion, already deciding for himself and dragging Nate along with him, his eyes shut wide open. But hang on, won't Giovanni? He ain't gonna see us. All Nate would have to do is trust him. Somehow, as reckless as Buck was played out to be, he must at least have some sense of vigilance to have survived out here for so long. Nate still swallowed his voice, silently following along. The hole they left in the fence last night was far too risky to cross now. As run down and deserted East Pie was nowadays, no one could possibly turn a blind eye to anything affecting its signature piece. The police quickly caught wind of the damage, ensuring the unofficial tourist attraction stayed untouched, never letting another soul get close. Luckily for the boys, the trees weren't exactly known for being short. Buck made it look easy, crawling up the bark like a bug, swinging onto a sturdy branch and peering down into the overgrown garden beyond the fence. Come here. Buck already knew Nate would struggle, lowering himself onto his stomach and reaching a scarred hand out. Beads of sweat trickled down the side of his face, if not in fear of his own safety, then for Nate's instead. Struggling was minimal, however. Despite a short wobble from Nate that certainly jump-started the adrenaline, Buck was the first to make the jump, his head whipping back to see Nate preferring a slow, sluggish slide. Snail, he simply remarked, when it started as a chuckle ended in a slightly pained seed, receiving a light slap at the back of Nate's hand. Come on, stop being silly. Nate tried to frown, his mouth twitching along Buck's grin stayed. What are we doing here? Buck diverted his gaze to the lone dead tree in the corner of the field of wildflowers, standing shamefully in its own wither and rot. It twisted his heart, wringing out all the hope of it the more and more he said, he'd be foolish to quit now. See that pond? Nate's eyes landed on the weeping willow first, its branches sunken in, and just below lay water infested with moss, brown and uncared for, frog spawn littered all over the edges. He wasn't a stranger to it. It was just the night before that he caught Buck staring with so much understated negativity, whether that be rage, sadness, confusion, or the like. He still couldn't make sense of it. Now it looked like he only felt hollow. Mama told me not to get close, else I'll drown. As they drew closer, Nate only hummed in acknowledgement. It didn't look that deep. He found it hard to imagine it being used to accidentally perish, and just beside it stood that unknown tombstone. Nate trying his best not to take a peek for even a millisecond. Name engraving carved a deep hole into his heart that would last for the foreseeable future. Graves always said that to him. He was never good with them. Buck seemed to be faring just fine. Focusing on other things, he stepped around the pond's edge, his back hugging the fence. Buck? Silence. He didn't even bring his head up, glued to the ground, crouching by the base of the tree. His hands reached out into the tall grass, and a damp, aged sheet poked out, handled with extreme caution and his worry it might tear. A couple of paragraphs in, Azori enough to bring him to tears. My dear Wyatt, I am unsure where I'll place this, as it is not confirmed you will receive it. However, I know how much you love to explore, always sneaking away from gatherings to play outside. If it's in the garden, I'm sure you will find it. You're sharp like that. By the time you are reading this, I am surely dead. I am unsure yet how I plan to die, as we both know the attempt at the pond came to nothing. But a way to prevent that failure from occurring again would be if I took your father with me. I am terrified of the man as much as you are. It repulses me to call him your father. As well as that, it is equally discordant to label you as my son. That is a title I am sure you do not wish to possess. I am believing myself to perform as your mother only fills me with dread. I am addressing you as a person, rather than a clueless child. Wyatt, you deserve nothing but the full, unadulterated truth. I did not wish to bear a child. Those feelings are still present now, and there is no simple solution to pry those thoughts away. At first I did try, conspiring the thought of a beloved daughter, long before you were born. Dorothy would have been the first. Oddly enough, I have a vague memory of telling you about her, though it is hard to tell if it truly happened or not. Either way, I shall reiterate. Your father despised Dorothy from the moment we learned we were having a girl. That was the final day before the angels took her. Giovanni hammered into my head that a son would strengthen our presence in the financial world, with a guaranteed heir to our efforts. A fool. When the public saw a baby, I saw a requirement. A tool. Well, the public saw a baby. That wasn't me with misreading, that was a bit of dirt smudged on the screen. Well, the public saw a baby. I saw a requirement. A lesser Dorothy. And thus I did not make efforts to show you love. Love, whatever that means to you, is foreign to me. I saw no point in putting effort into a false hope. Despite that, I recognized that your beaming smile never failed to light up the room. That flame never went out. There were times when you had approached me, and that alone ignited a feeling I could not decipher. And now I wonder if that was love that I am still unfamiliar with. When you find others who can provide that warmth, as I am sure you will, please do not spare them from your joy. Your environment has been limited in this damned house, and I am sure that my words hold no weight in your heart, but I promise you this, There are good people out there, and I'm sure they will welcome you with open arms. Do not feel afraid to embrace your true self. Do not hold on to anything Giovanni has told you. Marrying him was out of my control. He is scum, undeserving to be a father, and I am sorry I have failed to protect you. I am sorry for his words, actions, his presence and hurt. I am sorry you have hardly lived, all your years spent in fear of both him and I. I am sorry I failed as your mother, your mama. If there is one thing I can do before I go, it would be to take all that pain away. It is still not enough to make up for everything I owe you, but it is better than nothing. I am sorry I am a coward. I am sorry I must resort to expressing my true feelings on paper rather than in person. I am sorry you were born a Hazeltine. Elizabeth. Well, we're gonna call it there for today. Um, it was actually a really good place to end it as well. On that letter, a final confirmation that there was something in, something good in Elizabeth, even if it didn't seem like it. And she was sort of like forced into the situation. Her resentment towards Buck or Wyatt was because of that. It was more of resentment for her whole situation. And yeah, so a lot has been resolved here. All we have left is, at this point, Giovanni. And also, I'm wondering how Noelle is feeling about all this. Because we haven't had much time to see her feelings in the aftermath of this. So maybe we'll see more about that. But anyway, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed, and again, please check out the merch store in the description below, the Yo Makai store. And yeah, but that's it for today. I've said that 3 times now, haven't I? Next episode, we've got chapter 20, 21, 22, and 23. Can I do them all in one episode? I probably won't, but maybe if I have enough time.